Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. A landmark federal antitrust trial involving one of the world's largest tech companies underway right here in Washington. The parties, Meta, parent company of Facebook, and the Federal Trade Commission. According to the FTC, Meta illegally squashed competition and monopolized the social media market, at least when in terms of videos, by purchasing Instagram in 2012 and WhatsApp in 2014. Meta says it still faces ample amounts of competition, particularly in the video space, and these acquisitions were made lawfully. Joseph Caniglio joins me now here in Washington. Of course, that's where the show is based from. He is Director of Antitrust and Innovation Policy for the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation. Man, there's a lot of innovation in there. Joseph, it's great to have you with us. I want to play you something that Scott Ferguson, the chairman of the FTC, said on CNBC this morning. Listen.
All of us saw in 2020 how much power these platforms have, not just over our economic lives, over our social lives, our political discourse. That's what this case is about. It's about protecting Americans from the incredible market power of these companies and making sure that companies are competing with each other on the merits so we get innovation and growth.
Joseph, how much of this case, from your perspective, is about grievances within the Trump inner circle about 2020 and Facebook?
You know, it's hard to say, Major. Obviously, the Trump administration were the folks that brought this case initially. The initial complaint was actually dismissed and refiled by the Biden administration and is now being litigated by the Trump administration in court. So it's actually a great example of how a lot of these concerns about big tech are actually very bipartisan now. Clearly, the question of Meta's monopoly power is something the FTC is going to have to prove in court. And on this, you know, they certainly argue that Meta is limited in the competition it faces. They focus on Snapchat and another company, MeWe, as really the only major competitors. Meta takes a much different view. They say video competition from firms like TikTok, YouTube, and also short-form content like X and Twitter also compete with them for users' attention and advertisers. So it's really going to be a big matter of debate. I would note that in the case, the FTC's math, so to speak, sometimes a little fuzzy. They don't actually count a lot of the same types of activity that they say is relevant when that goes on those other platforms in the market. So it's something the judge already pointed out may be a problem.
Joseph, as you know, there's been a lot of reporting that Mark Zuckerberg tried to settle this case before trial. Do you think that's a possibility at this late stage?
You know, who knows? But again, I would just note that the Trump administration itself brought this case. And clearly, it seems like it's going forward. So I think that suggests that we're just going to have to see how this one plays out.
For those who watch this space, not just in terms of tech, but in terms of, is a deal in America a deal? As I mentioned, these transactions, 2012 and 2014, they've aged quite a while. And for those who are in the merger and acquisition space, they've got to know, wait a minute, under what regulatory atmosphere are we operating? Is a deal a deal? That's one of the things implicated here,
It's a great point. You know, most merger enforcement that the antitrust agencies do happens before the deal occurs. And the agencies take a look and see whether or not it's going to be any competitive. And they actually did that a decade or so ago with these transactions and found that they were fine. And actually, a court has already said in the state case against Meta that breaking apart the company after so long really just wouldn't be fair.
And that's what's at stake here, because if Meta loses, they have to give up or sell off, right?
Yeah.
WhatsApp and Instagram.
It's a huge, huge case. Instagram is almost half of Meta's revenues, and WhatsApp, not a huge revenue driver, but a huge part of Meta's overall business. We're basically talking about whether we're going to split Meta into two separate companies.
And it's been interesting in some of the testimony that those who were with Instagram when Facebook, before it became Meta, acquired him, felt like they were being starved by Facebook.
You know, that's certainly some interesting testimony. The FTC has focused a lot on the intent and a lot of documents by Mark Zuckerberg, by other executives.
That were anti-competitive, that sounding in nature.
Exactly. You know, but one of the things here is, you noted, this deal's already happened, and we've actually seen a lot of how the market has progressed. And I think the FTC is going to be very hard-pressed to overcome the fact that these products, Instagram and WhatsApp, have grown tremendously under Meta's watch, which suggests that consumers really did benefit.
And large regulatory agencies say they're always looking out for the consumers. The consumer experience right now, is it harmed by Meta? I mean, is there something that consumers are not getting in this space that they otherwise would get if Meta lost this case?
It's really hard for the FTC to show that consumers would have been better off had these transactions not occurred. They're basically saying that Instagram and WhatsApp would have turned into these great competitors had the FTC not bought them.
And as I understand it, and I'm not speaking for Mark Zuckerberg, I'm just reading what he and Meta have said, Zuckerberg said, look, when I spent $1 billion, I believe for Instagram, in 2012, people looking at me like I was a fool.
Yeah.
But I was seeing something that others in my competitive space didn't see. America's supposed to reward that.
It's very true. Most people don't realize, and I think most Wall Street firms would say this is really great, when a company goes from 30 million users and not a lot of revenues at all to 70 billion in revenues and over 2 billion in users in about a decade period. Again, I think that suggests that this was a pro-consumer deal.
And Joseph, when you think about this and where it's heading, are we 3 or 4 weeks, 6 weeks? When the country wakes up and says, well, wake me when it's over. When's the wake me when it's over moment?
I'm afraid, Major, this is still getting started. We've got the trial. That's going to take some time. If Meta loses, I'm sure they're going to appeal. There'll be a remedies trial. We still got a long way to go to see how this one shakes out.
Couldn't have had a better guest to help us break this all down.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it so very much.